Welcome everyone to the European VC podcast. Today I have Samuli Siren with me, together with our good friend Jeppe Høier, what we call our in-house CVC expert. Samuli, though, he is the CEO of Redstone, and Redstone is one of the most successful VCs in Europe that has a ton of corporate investors. So that's what we're diving into today. They have approximately 600 million euros across 10 funds, and they're focused on the A rounds and they're headquartered in Berlin, focusing on DACH, Europe, and global. But when it's global, it's mainly US. And they're focusing on, of course, across multiple sectors, but it's always digital and very often B2B. Notable investments for them are PlanRadar, Liqid, Finanzguru, Atlas Metrics, and Yoto. I hope you will, when you listen to this episode, really pay attention to Samuli and everything he is saying, because he is a guy who has massive success in raising from corporates. So every little word he says here is quite interesting to attach a lot of meaning to. Hope you'll enjoy the episode as much as I did to do it.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Samuli and Jeppe, welcome to the podcast, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think by now everyone knows that Jeppe is what I've dubbed to the world our in-house CVC expert, and he's at Andreas. We need to talk to Samuli. So Samuli, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you with us. I want to ask you to just dive right in and tell us what has allowed you to build Redstone to the behemoth and great success that it's been today.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words. First of all, it looks outside way better than my own view to inside is. Maybe it's the critical person in me.
Too humble.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, it's a certain view on things, but what is the story? I think the result of being very endurant in a way, never giving up and keep on going. And if you see it as a journey forward, and then it becomes something over the time. So I remember years back, the city of Helsinki asked me, how could Helsinki become a place like Berlin? And I said, it takes another 20 years, keep on doing that, then it's going to be like that. So that's same with the companies. So you develop, you question what you do, and you try to learn, do a lot of mistakes, and develop further. That's the same thing at Redstone. And I think that's the core of it. It's a long journey simply. And I think there are a couple of other elements involved, something like that. The one is, of course, that do you get the right people around you? Do you have the right culture in the company, which then you kind of generate the feeling to your clients and partners and whatever, and that they feel that that's the case. And that leads all to something successful one day, hopefully. And I think that's kind of sounds very philosophical, but I think that's what it is in the core.
But I think also, Samuli, right? There's something about how you built this, because now I've been in the venture world for more than 17 years now, and it's hard work, right? There's a lot of people coming in and thinking they can make some dollars on this.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's really tough business. In fact, you can put it in multiple pieces. The one is, raising a fund. I always say it's the hardest type of selling you can do at all. So that's, of course, the one thing, get the people convinced and tell that they give you the couple of millions that you're going to invest in something good and smart and make money and bring them back to them. That's really tough. The same thing is, investing in the successful case is really hard. So people very much underestimate the amount of work involved in all those different levels of collecting money and finding deals and managing the portfolio and making the exits and paying back to your investors. So very true. And it doesn't happen within a year or two or even five. It takes a longer time. Simple as that.
We brought Jeppe in for this conversation specifically because you guys have had quite some success with working with corporates. I'd love to ask you a bit about the philosophy and the principles that have been central for you when it comes to working with corporates.
the Redstone wasn't really created based on a certain strategy. It was kind of a result of things happening. And I was running a corporate fund previous to Redstone, so I saw what was going on there. So if you look in general, the corporates, what they're looking for, they understood that the development innovation, what all is happening out there, is very fast. They can't manage and create it in-house anymore, so they have to go outside, and they questioning how to do that. They're very good, very, very good in their core business, but they're very poor in understanding startups and in venture capital investing. So this was kind of the trigger point for us, and how I created the first Redstone business model is to say that we enable that for the corporates, and we try to make the best out of two worlds. Being a professional venture capital at the same time, have that corporate access and building that bridge and creating that. It can be very fruitful. At the same time, it's extremely challenging, mainly because of the clash of the cultures. And I think, Jeppe, you've seen that yourself at Maersk quite a bit. So just the pure understanding between these two worlds and to get the people to figure out what's happening on the other side, it's really, really challenging and never really been solved.
No, it's about making your senior executive understand what is a startup and how do you work with it. How do you create the right structures around it, right? Because now I think I mentioned it on every show, right? The average lifetime of a CVC vehicle is 3.7 years, right? So there's definitely something about educating our C-suite in how to manage this strategic tool.
How do you, because with that in mind, the average lifetime of a CVC is 3.7 years. That's not the average time of an LP commit. How do you make those two worlds coexist, so to say, or those two facts coexist? What do you do if we start right from the beginning, when you're considering fundraising from a corporate? How do you decide or disclose, because this is one of the most important things, uncovering very quickly whether it's time well spent or poorly spent with this potential LP? What are the signals that you're looking for when you're talking to a corporate, figuring out whether these guys are actually in this for the long haul, or it's not a place where I should be investing my time?
Well, figure out the signals and stuff. There are none. If you go there in the first meeting, they want to do this. They say, yeah, we're all in. We're going to do it big time, and we're going to invest a lot, everything. That's what they talk, and they explain this for another 2 years, and then they start to kind of question, and then the controlling comes and say, is this a smart idea? So what just happened 2 days ago, we took over a very big corporate fund CVC portfolio, and we will manage that because they kick out the whole team and they want us to sell all the assets and get rid of it. And I think something like 4 years is pretty matching number again in that case. So this seems to be the nature of that. And I don't think that there are signals or that you can even do much for it. So what we've been doing simply at Redstone, because we were managing corporate funds for quite a few years in the beginning. Now we just try to kind of force them into LP commitment. And then I got the 10 years commitment in. I just kind of moved our model way towards the other direction so that you don't have that time problem.
But maybe, Samuli, I think what is interesting, right, is that according to academia in the Nordics, more than 80% of CVCs, they do their investments for strategic reasons, right? So I think there is some development to be had when they then do the direct investments, right? Because it takes shorter time. So maybe a little question back to you here is, all the years that you have managed the Redstone funds, your understanding of how to work with the corporates, right? Because they ask strategic questions. So one thing is that you now have them as pure LPs in the fund, but how do you manage the relationship with them after investment?
First of all, you have to create the right kind of setup. So maybe good examples are FinTech fund. We have 17 banks as LPs, and they definitely have a strategic vision and expectation in investing that. So they say return is not that relevant. The amount compared to our balance sheet is ridiculous. So we want to get a strategic advantage out of it. So what we've done, first of all, is separate the LP investment and being a shareholder in a startup from the strategic part. So the C-level guys are not in discussion when it comes to the fund and us investing doing so. And if they want to do strategic something together with the startup, then that's a different discussion with the different people. So then the startup is talking to the bank itself, go into operational discussion, and that has a different time frame than the fund. We might invest today, that might start the cooperation in 3 years' time. Maybe because it makes more sense then, or the startup is developed further enough, whatever. And they have a business relationship which is not combined with our venture capital investor. And that was one of the keys what we understood, because this kind of smart money, we're going to help you, little startup, and then we get more shares for that. That leads only to pure frustration. So we keep those things totally separated. And then I think, and that's what I mean, the setup could be then somewhat fruitful. So starting point, so the cooperation is not forced. It can happen. If it does, then, it's a separate discussion. And then you kind of try to manage the expectations, and the investment runs separate chain and channel. So now if that's happening, and your question is then what happens then? We as a Redstone, being the fund manager and doing the fund, we can in the end only facilitate. So we can try to bring the parties together, and they have to find a way to operate together, because it's then pure business thing between them two. And now that's from the corporate side takes a lot of, especially the C-level people really have to, be supportive and understand, guys. Because basically they have to say their whatever department guy, say, okay, invest 1 day of your week to work with the startups, but please hit your budget targets in your core job. That's a challenge in the corporation side, and something we can't really help at all. But those who do want to, they manage, and they get quite a bit out of it then in the end.
It's true, right? I think it is the magic glue when you go over to the corporate side to figure out who is it that manages the relationship with the startups. I also do think, our interaction started back in 2018, I believe, where you assisted Mer's growth with a fintech study, actually. So we were in the early phase, and we needed to figure out, what startups were within specifically trade finance, because we had this huge customer base that we wanted to exploit in the best possible way, right? And I think those discussions were super important for the beginning of Mer's growth, because we kind of got an understanding of how to do our own deep dives, right? And Redstone specifically helped us with that. So super important part for us. But again, if you do not have anyone on the corporate venturing team, then it's difficult to work with startups in general. And I think also, as a GP getting corporate LPs, you also need to understand what asks are coming from the corporations. What do they want from you as a GP, right?
Yeah, I mean, the point is that having one in the corporate venture team who is kind of has the access into the corporation in the departments, that's a really key. And it's really tough role to fill, because you need someone who has the credibility within the corporation, so that he can call and people listen to him, take time and says, okay, let's have a look on this, take this person seriously. So usually it has to be someone who's been in the house for quite a while and has kind of the power and access, and can almost force the departments to do something with that certain startup, because it seems to make sense. It's really, really, really tough call. And that's been the most challenging. The bigger the corporation gets, the more challenging did that also become.
You haven't announced it yet, but you've just done a recent fund closing, and I'd love to ask you a bit about the process there, how it was different from past races. But let's maybe start by your core learnings from that race, and some of the core stats.
Yeah, I mean, we're bringing out our third fintech fund end of this year. I think it's good because it's an interesting exercise, because it's a third generation fintechs we're investing, and the beauty in that is, of course, that you have a 2 fund generations track record, which is a good one. So we are one of the best performing fintech funds in Europe, and that is so visible in fundraising, it becomes so easy suddenly compared to when you do your very first fund, which is horrible because everybody's asking you, do you know how to do it? So the Kickstart is of course amazing because when you launch a fund like that, you go to your existing LPs and say who wants to join the next one, and anything between 30 to 70% will most likely commit. So you have the anchor investors in place within weeks. That's what happened also in this case. And now when you go with this message and you saw the background and you basically know quite a bit already who you want to talk to and what kind of profile they have, the whole fundraising is so much easier because you don't have to prove yourself anymore. It's rather a discussion. Is this the field they want to be part of? Do they have the allocation? And then you get fast forward very, very fast. And that is for sure been a new experience also for us, because we had the previous funds, all the other we have are the first or max second generation. So down the road, it's been really, really hard to get the earlier funds all closed in short term. So that's again back to the point Jeppe said earlier about that it takes a long time, and that's another proof for that what we just experience at the moment.
This is where it all lines up, right? Both if you're running a standard GP or you have with corporates or without corporates, right? It's the investor relations part. So my VC background tells me that a lot of the time was spent between the startup ecosystem and the GPs, and not that much between the GPs and the LPs, and understanding their need and their want, right? And I think the modern GPs, they really need to focus on the LP community. That's also why I love EU.VC, because that is what matters, right? You need to communicate to your LPs all the time and make sure that they understand when you'll be in fundraising, and then do some of these more. There's not an easy close of the fund, I will not say that, but it will be easier than just cold calling everybody again, and you haven't talked to them for 4 years, right?
Very much so. Very, very true.
Can I ask you, because you had an interesting statement in the show notes, and you said that you have to meet people 7 times to convince them. Tell me about like the I'm sure there's a lot of blood and tears gone into coming to that finding, but also tell me a bit about the philosophy.
Oh, this is purely when it comes to the fact that, people have a certain amount of money and they would trust you and give you that amount and say, this guy will take care of this and will invest and bring me a lot more back one day. And that's very much a personal trust issue. So that's why I have this 7 meetings thing. And we really believe in that, we're pushing that. And that seems to kind of lead to a decision. I mean, after 7 meetings, you usually do get a go or no-go decision finally, which is very, very important. So there's not more philosophy in that a bit of a mathematical view on things. And that's why, especially the Corona time was so hard, because, this kind of video call, it's very easy if you know the people, but to get to know someone really well, create a personal trusted connection is rather hard. So that's why we follow this 7 times meeting rule. And I can tell you that the fund which just took over, that was exactly 7 meetings we got the signing. So
That's fine.
that confirmed the idea. And by the way, just a comment on this one little thing, because many startups, when you go them earlier, we have a great contact, they're going to buy our product, whatever. And if you start to ask this way around, they're so far off signing the client, and it's really because they haven't really iterated with the client enough. And that means it has to be so many times usually before it happens.
One stat that I know always surprises people a bit, or maybe doesn't surprise as much, but it's nice to see confirmed. We had Stephen Chandler on the podcast, the founder of Notion, and he said he looked at their latest fundraise, and he found out that on average, the new LP coming into that fund, they'd known that LP for 3 years. Does that sound about right for you as well?
Most of the time, yeah. I mean, it depends of course the type of the investor. I mean, some, let's say, successful founders who invest, they heard of you, they've seen you a certain way. You haven't talked about investing as an LP though, but that's for sure helpful. At the same way, they then go after recommendation. That's an own group. But the more that what you mentioned there, the more institutional become, the more it becomes this kind of process. So there's a very large global sovereign wealth fund from Asia who told me that we've been looking to you guys. We are very excited what you do. That was like 2 years ago, and said we'll now gonna have you on our radar for 8 years, and if we like what we do, then we invest. Well, I have 5 more years to go, but yeah, there is, so, and that is of course again to the thing that it's a long run, because what you do want to get is you want to get into the allocation plans of the large institutional players, because then they chip in 40 million every year into your fund structure.
Yeah.
But that takes 10 or 15 to get into that position that they start to do that with you. So
Yeah,
bit of a pain in the ass.
But maybe I can also chip in here, right? Because Samuli, my understanding of what you do for Redstone, right, is that you lead the Redstone team and you spend your time primarily on fundraising. Is that correct?
Yeah, now if you talk about what is my role at Redstone, I think this is exactly 2 things. I'm really kind of the cultural leader of the company. So, and a cultural need, how do we operate and how we do things together? How can I empower the people in-house, and what is the direction we're going? So the generic strategy. And the other one is, I do the fundraising. These are the 2 main jobs I have. And it's a good combination. I get the inside and outside view all the time. So I'm feeling very comfortable doing so.
It's interesting because, right, I spoke to an emerging manager the other day, and he just managed to raise his second fund. And he did final close, right? He's now 10 companies into that fund and can do another 10. So he will be out fundraising again in another 12 months, right? So he has both the investment partner hat on, and he also has the fundraising hat on. But he tend to be a little bit schizophrenic, right? Because he has a very, very short time frame where he actually can focus on only investing, and then he needs to be fundraising again, right? So I think there's also something, where when you have been in the market for a long time and then understand that you actually need to fundraise all the time is super important.
Yeah, I fundraise all the time, and those kind of person as you describe, I mean, those are the superstars. I might be not that good as he is, so I have to get some good people around me to do some of the jobs.
Yeah, is it your understanding that when you want to get access to corporate LPs, that then it's it's more intense effort to get them on board compared to institutional investors?
It's very different, and maybe more intense, because the institutionals are professionals, and that's their core task. So you talk to them, they have a look, they have a very specific questions, and then they have a process to make a decision. If you go to the corporation, they do it the first or second time, whatever, and they're all over the place. And the corporate thinking comes into the game all the time. So you have a weird discussion and stuff going on all the time, back and forth. Sometimes you just don't know why the heck they're asking this now. And in the end, you get they ask then, what is the minimum ticket? Which is kind of, well, what the fuck, yeah. Sorry.
and then you tell them 3x what you want.
Yeah, it's a bit painful then in exact moment, yeah. So there is a big difference if the LP is professional or not. And it's very, very lovely to talk with the professional LPs, because it's such a straightforward, clear process. So if you have done your homework, you have a good data room, you understand what is their allocation, decision making, then you really get through pretty fast to a decision, go or no go, which is great.
How would you say, or what would you say are the core things that allow you to be successful with the corporates? What are the important things to remember as a VC that wants to raise from corporates?
I mean, they're looking for these strategic elements. They ask, what can we gain out of this for ourselves? And if you understand that and can put that into format and give them the feeling that you can help them with this element, speak their language, that is usually the key to the success. The other dimension, always a bit underestimated, is this whole thing of working with startup innovation should be fun. So give them a feeling it's a really cool stuff to do, and you can learn a lot and you can have fun, and it's a great thing to be part of. You can win a lot of simply also with that. So making it also exciting, interesting, fun is a huge element of that. So little tricks, I have really do tricks I use. You might know German a bit, so if I talk about German corporation, I tend to not to say this formal Sie, which is kind of the very formal way of talking to someone. I tend to say directly you, very personal way, which you don't do in Germany. And then I apologize for doing so. Of course, I'm a foreigner. I don't speak that good German. Okay, I might speak very, very good German. So I do it a bit on purpose. They like that. They're like, oh yeah, don't worry. I'm Richard, whatever. Call me first name. Let's go. The second thing is, and that's the same trick you do. Very early on, I make a joke, usually about myself and usually about my bald head, and you make everybody laugh. And you crack the meeting very in the beginning. So you're very personal level discussion, and you had a good, nice joke. So you have a good atmosphere. That's what it's about. And then you talk about startups and explain the innovation and this cool stuff coming, and we can be part of all this, and let's do this together. And people are like, yeah, I want to do this, because they're having a good time.
I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask it anyway to make it super clear. Do you run the same pitch deck and agenda for corporate LP the first time around as you would with an institutional?
No, not at all. I mean, I run a different pitch deck to every corporate. I optimize to each corporate. I spend quite a lot of time when we go to the first meetings to say, what are they looking for? Who is in the room? What is driving them? What were the last 10 press releases they had? What stands on the website? I try to understand by every potential new LP, what is there? Why am I talking to them, and what do they want to hear? So it's every time I do a different pitch. If you give them the feeling that you've done your homework and you understand their side of the ball game, and you can ask directly, look, you guys did this last time. Is this the reason? Do I get it right? Whatever. You connect with them because you show that you've done your homework and you understand what is driving them. So I think that's one of the things I'm pretty good at. I'm very well prepared for the meetings.
How do you know when it is worth doing that much homework before taking the meeting?
It's always worth that much homework because you have to take your chances. Every shot you don't take, you're going to miss.
Do you work in the same way when you raise from family offices, as an example, or private individuals?
Yeah, always. If I get a chance to talk to the decision maker, it's always a serious game. I really take it seriously. I mean, the worst thing is I go there, they would be interested in investing, and I'm not prepared.
Tell me about your first outreach. How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I hate that. So the easy part of first outreach is, of course, the people you know. You say, look, we're something new there. Let's have a chat. But the problem is really how to approach the people you don't know. The cold calling is the worst you can do. So we are definitely really trying to seek for intros, warm intros, to somebody tell that, talk to this guy. You can take him seriously. They have some good stuff. So we do a lot of work around this, and we've done a lot of work around that. We're not being very good at that, so we're still learning quite a bit. But we have a massive list of contacts, and yeah, this first outreach is very painful, and that's I don't know a better way. I have a feeling everybody else knows a better way than we do.
No, I don't think so. How many of the LPs in your pipeline come from a cold outreach in the beginning by you or someone in your firm? versus from an introduction?
Well, other way around, you have a couple of buckets. So if you start a new fund, the first bucket is you put a list together, say who are the most profitable LPs we know really well who could become the anchor investor. For example, a growth fund, which we are now raising, looking somewhat good to process. The list is something like 30 plus names. So that's 30 something I know really good. I can kind of WhatsApp them and say, hey, we have something coming up. Shall we have a chat? Are you in Berlin? Should we have a dinner? So I try to get this into very personal mode. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is something a bit further away or institutional, whatever. We might need a warm intro there, like Jeppe has done us few. And so then you go on this level. And then you have the third bucket, which is like, okay, we have to get the sovereign wealth fund from I don't know where, and we have no clue how to get there. And then you just try different channels. And that's the horrible one, because that's kind of a, try to make a difference in cold email outreach, why they should read your email at all. What is the percentage? I mean, maybe the percentage is better than in the first bucket, you have a good chance of, I don't know, closing 20% of them because you know them so well that you're very good on handpicking. And second bucket, maybe you're in a level of 5, and your last bucket, you're somewhere like 0.5%. So you get declined a lot, and you have to accept that.
And you just said earlier that your FinTech Fund 3, you had 70% old investors. If you think across the funds, what would you say is the mix typically?
How do you mean mix old and new?
The mix of old versus new investors?
Yeah, I mean, there are statistics out there that that you usually get anything between 30 to 70% rolled into the new fund. And there are different reasons then why people decline. Maybe that's a good thing to, why do they decline? So now you get to the market situation. So we have a very fruitful situation while we're talking to fintechs and banks, because bank had amazing business in the last 2-3 years because they had so much interest game ongoing. Secondly, they were very aware of the real estate problems way earlier than everybody else understood it. So they covered their asses. So they're kind of good. So you have a good success rate with the banks at the moment. If you look on the German or European industry, you have a different story. So they all love what you do, whatever, but you don't get many commitments at the moment because they all struggle, automotives especially. So as you see, I can't answer you kind of one answer. You have to look very much in the market and the sector and the players and who's involved and so on and so forth.
I love diving into to fundraising and trying to disclose from someone like you that, especially on the corporate side, you have the experience that many don't. And I think you've said many things that does surprise many. Now, I want to ask you, just tell us a bit about Samuli, because you've just shared a ton about how you fundraise and your thinking in this space. So let's just add some flesh to the bone here.
Yeah. What do you want to know? Look, I think as a person, I'm very passionate about whatever I do. And I think that the company is one of those things. So I tend to say that I don't go to work. I don't have a job. I just have my passion. It's the company. And I love what I do here. So I feel fulfilled, and I enjoy the success, and I enjoy to manage the troubles we have. So it's very satisfying when you manage. So it's a bit of a way of living. But it's one of the 3 elements, important in my life. The other one is my family, amazing wife, and my 2 kids. And it's a second very personal thing you have. And the third is myself. So it's about being me and what I do and what is important for me. And that can be my hobbies or learning or not learning and whatever it is. And for me, the balance of those 3 things are making me happy and satisfied with myself and my life so far. And that's always the driver for me. So I do things I'm excited and passionate about, I like, and in all those 3 dimensions. That's me, I think.
If you were to give advice to a young person in the CVC industry, what would be your advice?
This is one of the hardest questions at all, because I think it's really, really hard because it's very personal. Every person is so different. Young person is very different in that sense. But if I would pick a couple of the areas, and I kind of touched this base already a bit, one is kind of this humor and relaxed being, a bit of yourself and create an enjoyable environment. I think that's very, very useful very often. The other one is to understand sales. And sales is, and I mean with selling your own idea. And sometimes you have to do it within the corporation to your boss at the other department to get the budget, or you sell your product to B2C client, whatever. But understand the selling as a psychological game, even if it's not your strength. That is really a driver in your career, because even if you're a scientist, you have to get the budget. So you have to be able to transmit your story and get people to believe in you and what you do there. And selling is very psychological. So it's really about getting into the head of the other side. And it's not about what convinces you. You have to think about, what do I have to sell if the other side gets excited about this? And this would be something I would always encourage people to think about, because in whatever, and even if you want to have a job and you're applying for a job, you have to sell yourself as a person, say, I'm the right one for this. So people should, spend a bit of time with it, with this selling, and it sounds so tough and so not exciting, or some people don't like that, but in the end, that's what it is. And the last piece for sure is then, it took me a while to learn to listen. And there are two dimensions. One is what is said, and the other one is what is not said. But you can still read between the lines. So if you listen carefully and you really think about what are they saying and why do they say this, can be very, very helpful in any situation. Some people are way too excited about their own things, way too narrow looking, kind of, and only their own business, and don't really carefully listen to the other side. So, but for sure, also in my case, everything I say now have been a hard learning with a lot of mistakes to get to this point to be able to say this.
I often get the questions from people working in CVC. How do I get into venture capital?
Oh, yeah.
And then I get a little bit frustrated, right? Because I don't, now I'm kind of turned, I'm a VC turned CVC, and I love CVC for everything that it can do for startups, right? But I think, Samuli, getting into venture capital as a young person, if that is really what you want to do, what would your recommendation be to such a young person? Where should they start?
I mean, I'm the weirdo in this business anyway. I didn't even finish my studies, and I had to repeat the classes in the school, and so I'm the crazy one, all in all. So not the normal career path. I mean, you have, of course, the educational elements, whatever. What comes after that? So maybe other way around. How do we hire? Who do I hire? I'm building a very diverse team, not in a way the Vogue movement is talking about diverse in a way of people, background, thinking, and this kind of diverse. So we have a very different kind of personalities there, which makes it very, very interesting. And I'm looking for that. So I'm looking for kind of a cutting edge thinking. I say, okay, that's a different way. I like that. Secondly, and that's the listening thing, that I realized that the people have a learning ability, and they listen and they say, okay, wait a second, what is he saying? What does this mean? And I see their head working around that. So I hire personalities and thinkers. I don't care about much what they've done before, because if I get those first two things, then I know, okay, I can make something out of this. And often I'm looking for a bit of the misfits. So if you remember the Apple advertising end of 80s, early 90s, think different. That's a bit of a way how I hire people, because I want to get those the bit different kind of people. So that's why, what is the career path? I don't have the answer. I'm just telling you how I like to hire. Because that creates amazing discussions internally. And it's very exciting because, if you have this monoculture, everybody's going through the consulting and then whatever PE fund, and went through this machine, then you have a monoculture which is everybody's thinking exactly the same way. But you have the different approaches and you have the discussion, and you can go like, why on heck is he saying that? Why is she pointing out to this exact point now? And that makes it interesting. And that's for me what I'm looking for. But that's not really an advice for a young person. It's rather how what I want to hire.
No, but I think it allows for everybody to engage with Redstone at least, right? And there's no one that is better than the other, right? Also because there's a lot of VCs that like to get former operators into their business because they understand to work with a startup compared to somebody coming out of a business school and so forth, right? So
yeah, but we have roles, of course. No, of course I have a job description and say, you know, these are the tasks to be taken care of. But still, there is not a one certain type of CV which is accepted. No, I said there are very many. If you cover the, you know, the task and you have the basic knowledge to do so, after that's very open.
I'd love to ask you about some counterintuitive learnings, because I think you have some that will surprise people.
I mean, it's kind of it's very narrow view on those. But what surprises me in the corporate world, how often the digitalization is not seen as the game changer, or not seen as the most crucial thing. It's really surprising how the people like to, you know, keep on doing how as they've been doing the business for quite a while. So there's a lot of this kind of thing out there. So it's sometimes really hard then to force to think the new way, and that's somewhat frustrating. And now you see the bit of happening even in Europe quite a bit. The other one which I really tend to hate is, and how many times we lost against some internal crappy team guys who've been doing, you know, marketing, whatever. I say we do now the corporate venture here. And then the C-level guys, you know, say, okay, we do it with our own people. They are skewed and we leave the professional out. I mean, that is, I hate that. Because it's just, you know, you really pick the green bees, the people who didn't even have an intention to be in that space, have no experience at all. And you trust them to do the investment part and thinking that it would be so damn easy. That's really annoying.
I remember speaking to a guy who said the exact same, that he just hates seeing, like, meeting a family office, hearing about everything they're doing, and then seeing, you know, okay, they're on this track. Like in 5 years, they're going to come back and going to say, yeah, okay, we did we did this, we did that, and now we realize. And then, you know, can we just skip those 5 years? Can we not waste the 30 million and just start afresh?
But there is a good number out there, right? Because there was a study done by a Harvard professor amongst CVCs. And of those CVCs, 60% of them, they actually said that C-suite did not understand what they were doing. So I think it also counts into that, right? C-suite
totally
needs to be educated a bit more to get into this world and understand what the venture capitalists can actually do.
The last thing, which is very important, by the way, you have a founder who has a startup, a very young one. And if you talk to corporate, there's only one founder there, which might not be there anymore, who's the owner, CEO, whatever. So there's only one entrepreneur thinker on the corporate side. So, and that's really interesting. I realize I see myself, if I get to talk to the principal, the family office, whatever, I connect with them immediately because they've been in the same position as I am. They're founders, you know, they put up their business, I put up mine. So we have a level of discussing and understanding. Everybody else is a hired manager, employee, whatever. And their first view on things is, what does this mean to my career? How does this, what we do here, bring me further in the group to get a higher salary, more vacation, a better title, whatever it is? So they barely ever think about, is this the best possible thing for the corporation to do?
Yeah.
No, the first is, what does it mean to me? And then it's good for the corporation. And that's really hard to accept, especially as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. How often, just a question on that, how often do you raise from the principal versus from the hired gun, so to say?
I don't have a percentage, but I can tell you that I'm very good on hiring from the principal, and not that good from hiring from some hired manager who has a checklist. Because the principal, you speak the same language, you get a very personal discussion. You say, are we going to do this together or not? And they say, okay, let's do this. It's a handshake, and then we execute. The hired manager has his checklist and he wants to go through all these things and get the tick in the boxes. And entrepreneurial spirit and mind like I am get frustrated in processes like that. So,
yeah. And in other words, or as an extension to that, clearly you also target the places where you can see, okay, I have access to the principal.
Yes, Redstone covers all the areas, but where do we put me as a person is for sure rather, okay, we have a principal access there, I should talk to them.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Samuli, thank you so much for joining me and Jeppe on this episode. Like, I don't know if I want to open the podcast with this because I think it's somewhat provocative when I do our intro, but I've been thinking here, I really want to make sure that people listen past the fact that you're a very, very calm Finnish guy that is not a speed talking US investor from the Valley, because you've had so many profound things to say, but you have not felt at all the need to oversell and be the hype man. So I want to almost I want to say that here. Thank you so much for taking the time, diving deep with us, sharing the nuggets, and being yourself and being, truthful to yourself.
Thank you so much. It's been great fun.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.